Hello, I'm Julie. In the middle here, we have Nicholas and then Taylor. So for our competency assignment number 2, our issue was labor exploitation and workers' rights. To begin with, some definitions. Labor exploitation is defined as exploiting people for profit. And it can also be defined as committing violations that cause psychological, physical, emotional, or financial abuse to people. Similarly, workers' rights, it's the association between an employer and its employees. So not necessarily something negative, just that association. And part of workers' rights is employers ensuring safe treatment and working environments for these employees.
So starting with my country, I chose the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, known shorthand as North Korea. They have about 26 million people that live there. They're racially homogenous, meaning they're all pretty much North Korean, but they do have a small Chinese community and a few ethnic Japanese as well. Korean is the native language. As of 2024, despite slowly reestablishing cross-border trade with China, North Korea persists as one of the world's most isolated and impoverished countries in Asia. North Korea has been under the rule of a long-standing dynastic dictatorship with Kim Jong-un as the current supreme leader and head of the Workers' Party of Korea. Their leadership was what allows exploitation to happen and spread since their power goes unchecked. The key issue that I'm focusing on is the labor forced upon the people of North Korea, which goes hand in hand with other violations, including undercompensation. The government controls all aspects of the formal employment sector, including assigning jobs and determining wages through the Workers' Party that the supreme leader is in control of. The workers do not have the right to join or form independent unions, bargain collectively, or strike. So they're unable to advocate for themselves, especially for the fear of being penalized and even death. The law does not protect workers from retaliation for union activities or penalize employers who interfere with them. One of the few nations in the world that has not joined the International Labor Organization, and since it is a UN agency dedicated to promoting social and economic justice through the establishment of international labor standards, it would make sense why North Korea would not want to be a part of that since they are exploiting their workers. The law that they have prohibits forced or compulsory labor, but the government fails to implement it, compelling the population to work on construction and other projects. They have reformatory labor and re-education through labor. It sometimes involves entire families, but they're when you're forced to work because of punishment, and it's usually used for political offenses. Forced labor continues to take place in industries such as brickmaking, cement, mining, logging, iron, agriculture, and textiles. In 2019, workers required to work at government-assigned enterprises either received no compensation or were paid inadequately by these enterprises. Many workers endure long hours, poor living conditions, and often lacking access to proper healthcare or legal protections. And since there is no statutory minimum wage in the country, everyone is at risk of being exploited. The law does, North Korea's law prohibits works by children under 16 and restricts those aged from 16 to 17 from working in hazardous conditions, but the government doesn't effectively enforce these laws. In October 2021, the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights reported that orphans and street children were particularly vulnerable to child labor, but school children are also used to work on laborious projects as well instead of learning. They're not the only people that are being exploited. It's even workers from other countries working for North Korea that are at risk of being exploited as well. And why does North Korea do this? They depend on the labor of its population to generate money, since they have sanctions that exclude them from trading with many countries. And the forced labor also is used as a mechanism for exerting control over individuals. The responses and interventions that they have, one that they have for North Korea in there is the Citizens Alliance for North Korean Human Rights. But most of the support against the child labor occurs, most of the support against the child labor occurs from outside of the country, and not even just child labor, for all labor exploitation. So the Committee for Human Rights in North Korea, they work to open their borders so that the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees can help, since they're currently not able to get into the country. They're also working to try to get countries working with the North Korea to establish a code of conduct to protect their workers as well. We also have Human Rights Watch, which spreads awareness of crimes committed and their violations. So my recommendations, since we're unable to get into the country because their borders are closed, I say that we continue to work with the UN and human rights NGOs to push for initiatives to help, and to continue to advocate and spread awareness through campaigns, not even just to educate them, but to educate other countries as well and ourselves, so that we can help them as best as we can.
So for my country, I chose to look into the Democratic Republic of Congo. Congo is located in Central Africa and is actually the second largest country in Africa. Currently, the population is around 115 million, and shockingly, about 50% of the population is under 15 years old. In the Congo, there are over 200 ethnic groups and languages. It's very diverse, and Christianity is currently the dominant religion, excuse me. So until 1960, the Congo was a Belgian territory. After it was annexed in 1960, a very violent dictator took over for about 20 years. His name was Mobutu Sese Seko. He actually renamed the country under his rule to Zaire, after the great river that runs through the country. He was ousted in 1997, and after his ousting, the country fell into a civil war, which lasted until about 2003. In 2005, the Congo had their first official democratic constitution instated. Unfortunately, corruption remains high, and the government really has no control currently in the country. The Democratic Republic of Congo is very rich in natural resources, from diamonds, cobalt, copper, and other minerals. Unfortunately, these natural resources have been exploited from the workers in the country from the time it was founded under the Belgian territory. Even under the Belgian law, people were forced to work. One of the main issues I wanted to focus on were these artisanal mines. Artisanal mines are also sometimes called small-scale mines, but basically it's a mine in which no large equipment is used, only human hands and small tools. In these artisanal mines, they're only supposed to be operated on government land, but there's such a high demand for especially cobalt that oftentimes companies from outside of Congo come in and establish these mines wherever they want, clearing villages over the mines and forcing those people to labor in the mines because they really have no other options. Because these are small scale mines, they're inhumane working conditions. Mines often collapse, trapping and killing people. And the minerals themselves are toxic. And oftentimes you'll see mothers with their babies strapped, just trying to make enough to feed their families. Which brings me to how, although the country does have a minimum wage requirement, there's no regulation, so workers in these mines are often paid well below what the minimum is. There has been a lot of international response recently to these violations. The first one is the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. They created a roadmap for extractive industries in developing countries like the Congo. And this roadmap is trying to help guide these developing countries in creating tax reform and rebuilding their financial systems so the profits from the mining industry can go to the country and to the people of the Congo. Similarly, in the United States, Section 1502 of the US Dodd-Frank Act forced tech companies to provide information or what are called conflict mines. So these companies now have to disclose where they get their minerals and things like that. And the last one in 2019, BMW and a few other global organizations created what was called Cobalt for Development, which was actually a 3-year study that looked into the lives of miners to see what kind of things needed to be improved to provide quality of life and sustainability in mining. So some interventions I've thought of for the country is the first one, relying on their youth population. As I mentioned, over 50% of the population is under 15. And these young people are creating organizations. They're tired of the violence that has been occurring in their country, and they're ready to move forward with a truly democratic state. Also, one great thing about the Cobalt for Development study is it kind of met the people of the Congo where they're at, looking at the different social and cultural implications and interventions that will actually help the people that are living and working in these areas. And similarly, I think it's really important to look at all levels of the supply chain of these minerals, from the tech companies in China who are requesting them, to those people who are asking others to mine, even to the delivery of the minerals, just to have regulation and responsibility in all levels.
So my chosen country was Brazil. So Brazil has the population of 217,710,248, which is 2.69% of the world's population. There's approximately 5 to 7 major ethnic groups, along with dozens of minority ethnic groups, and the main religion in Brazil is Catholicism. So Brazil is a democracy and has a federal and presidential form. Brazil is run by President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva under the Workers' Party, which is a major social democratic party. So what I found for specific issues in Brazil when it comes to workers' rights would be dangerous working conditions and discrimination. So as of 2020, half of Brazilian children have been sent to work in dangerous conditions. Under the Brazilian law, children are not even supposed to be working if they are 15 years old or under 15. However, apprentices can begin working at the age of 14 as long as they are not under dangerous and unsafe conditions. Some of the child labor have include sex and drug trafficking and handling heavy machinery. So the discrimination that I have found in my research was that Brazilian women face the most discrimination in their wages, as they can earn an average of 19.4% less than men. On International Women's Day in 2023, Brazil had passed a equal pay legislation which would fight against discrimination and poor wages that had an effect on women. Other than gender discrimination, there has been statistics that have shown evidence of racial discrimination, with Black women earning 68% of less than of white men. So Brazil has passed the federal decree number 11,795 over 2023 that regulates the gender pay parity law, meaning that both men and women will receive equal pay. With the new law in Brazil, it would be an effort to create greater economic equality. So more research that I have found was Institution Development and Workers Education Manager Maria Vanuhi. She stated that this is all about getting back what has been taken away from these workers. They are the workers who keep the economy going. More research that I have found, I actually found a story about a woman who is the mother of 5, had lost her job as a salesperson in a clothing shop. She stated in an interview that we have no rights, yet we work hard. We don't see the state because we have no social protection. We only see the state when the police come to take our goods. Society's view must change. We are workers and we need policies that ensure our rights, especially women, because we suffer the most. So what I found, what I came to find as a recommendation that we as social workers could do is to engage in policy practice. This would be more for the macro level, as we should continue our research and policies and understand how individuals and families are affected by these policies, whether it's a positive effect or a negative effect. We should educate as many individuals as we can to help understand that every human has rights and that no discrimination should be shown.
So we made some connections across the countries that we just discussed. Some similarities was the forced labor. Each country does have forced labor. I know that for the Congo, they're forced to do so because they don't have another option. And I know in North Korea that it's because they're forced to by the government. And that also relates to child labor, which was discussed within Brazil and even within all of the countries. But with Brazil, children are forced to participate in drug trafficking, sex work, and dangerous weapons. Children are working in the mines in the Congo, which is hazardous work conditions that we're going to speak on. And same for North Korea. Children are working when they should be learning and in school. So to speak on the hazardous working conditions, for the Congo, they have to work in mines, as she was just discussing, and those are very dangerous conditions to work in. You're risking your life. And same for the children that are working in Brazil, they're risking their life. They're not getting compensated for that kind of work. And even in North Korea, they're working long hours, no safety protocols implemented to protect them. They're not even able to have alliances or unions to represent or advocate for themselves either. The undercompensation is something that was across the score for all of us, with women in Brazil being paid less than men. The people in North Korea are being undercompensated, as well as the people in the Congo. And even in North Korea, some are not even being paid. And that's for the same for across the scope as well, because children are working and they're not getting compensated for that. The laws that are in place are mostly put to seem like they're going to be advocating for their people, but they're not being enforced.
So for the differences, the undercompensation was specific for women in Brazil. No statutory minimum wage in North Korea, and no government regulation or oversight for the Democratic Republic of Congo. So we have come to find that the democratic constitution is pretty new and the government has no regulation or oversight, which allows for outside companies to exploit the laborers. As for North Korea, no minimum wage. North Korea does have no minimum wage. It gives the government the ability to exploit their workers and normalizes compensation. As for Brazil, the Constitution prohibits pay disparities based on gender, age, and experience, as the mandatory wage cannot even be reduced.
So in conclusion, we've definitely found that all of these countries are behind on ending labor exploitation and upholding the workers' rights. There has been some international responses to all of these social issues in all the countries to make changes, but there's definitely still some room needed. So as we're social workers, we can continue to educate the people within the countries about their rights and make sure they know that they're being exploited, looking at the cultural and social lens that is appropriate for each of the countries. And to go on with this presentation, we have created a handout that kind of breaks down the different social issues that we've discussed and looks at each of the 3 countries discussed to compare and understand what we can do as social workers. And we have some references to review. And thank you for the time.